currying today, so we probably won't talk with Don on today's program, but we will talk plenty of football. In fact, this is a virtual football fiesta for a Wednesday edition as we'll go through the games from last night and, kind of a ancillary issue to one of the games and how it carries into this week and next week as well. Dave, good afternoon. How are you?
We're doing pretty good, Rob. How are you?
I'm okay. I mean, I'm recovering from the explosion of a microphone, but we're fine. We're good. I'm only kidding.
I apologize for that. I like destroying equipment to make my presence known.
Little off-the-air thing that we're still laughing about here. It happens. So in any event, obviously 16 games to get to, but let's start with the one that you were at because you had one of the longer trips, in fact, in the state. Let's start there.
Yeah, it might as well have been in Windsor, Ontario, to be honest.
Good point.
It was a couple-hour trip up to Windsor, and New Canaan pulled out a 21-6 win. It was really tough. The conditions were tough. New Canaan had an emotional win because they did lose a couple of their players last night, both Cognetta brothers, and we can talk about that too. But really, some people moved into some new roles. You had Kyle Smith playing safety. You had Smith and O'Connell running the ball with the Cognettas out, and I was really impressed with the way they pulled together, and the depth really came through.
Let's start with the Cognetta play because I got the sense in reading your story that really kind of galvanized the Ram team, especially at halftime.
Yeah, definitely. They pulled together, and Kyle Smith referred to it as a brotherhood. He'd been playing with the Cognettas and a lot of these kids since they were in the third grade together. It's a lot like the dynamic that the Darien Blue Wave has this year with these kids playing together for so long. Cognetta, basically what happened on the play was he ran for a 75-yard touchdown, which was going to be called back because of a hold anyway. But once he got into the end zone, he got a shove from Windsor's Isaiah Huff. Could be a little bit out of frustration. It could have been a little bit of a message sender. And he ended up going into some scaffolding that was set up behind the end zone and injured his shoulder. It's questionable right now. What I heard last night was that he might be done for the year, so his career will be over in that case. But for a little while there after that, there was a call. He was called for a penalty, and it gave New Canaan a first down, 15-yard penalty on Huff. I don't think he did it intentionally to hurt anybody. I think it's more out of frustration. But the game did get a little bit of a hand like that, and I think if it wasn't a playoff game, that it could have really gotten out of hand. Like it was a regular season game, I think the kids there might have been some other extracurricular activity going on.
And of course, that's Class L we're talking about as New Canaan beat Windsor 21-6. Notre Dame of West Haven finished Harding's story 34-0. Unfortunately, Harding couldn't even get on the scoreboard. North Haven over Middletown 48-13, and Wethersfield over Torrington 33-6. So now New Canaan hosts a game on Monday. They host Notre Dame of West Haven. And look, there are a couple of games that I'm really high on next week. That's one of them, but that one kind of hiding in the shadows of a couple of other big games that we'll get through in the balance of the broadcast. And then you've got also Wethersfield and North Haven taking place as well. Winners move on to the state championship.
I think you're right. I think that New Canaan, Notre Dame, West Haven, I think people are thinking, okay, New Canaan went up and beat Windsor, which was ranked third in the state going into last night's game. They beat them there, and now they're going to go back home. They get another home game, which is an unusual circumstance because it's the semifinals. And but that Notre Dame West Haven team is a very good team. They have 2 losses this year. They lost to Shelton and they lost to North Haven, 2 undefeated teams. There's nothing to hang your head over on that. And it's going to be a tough game. New Canaan can't look past. I think at this point in the state tournament, you can't look past anybody. I think everybody's coming off a win, so everybody's got momentum. Everybody's playing well, and these teams aren't there for nothing.
Yeah, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. Obviously, we have semifinal games to play, but the idea of North Haven and New Canaan.
Woo! Could be really a lot of fun.
That'd be fun. North Haven, really one of the best teams in the state, and they're 11-0 on the year.
And they played a few years ago in the state tournament, and I think the week before the Snow Bowl at Boyle Stadium with New Canaan and Darien. And North Haven's a tough team, and they're really doing well. They're consistent. They last few years they've been very good. The program's a perennial contender now, and they're having their best year in history for them. And that would be a great final, but got to get by one more.
I thought Michael Collins' numbers were okay, but not overwhelming. 16 of 28, 187 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 INTs. Was it an efficient game for him, or does he still seem a little off? To me, he seemed off in the Turkey Bowl. Did he still seem off to you last night?
I think he was a little off, and it's hard to tell whether that's because of the weather, because it is tough to grip the ball. I was told he was asking for a new ball a lot, and it's tough. I also get the feeling, and they're not saying this right now, but I think he's been a little bit under the weather with illness right now, and was for the Turkey Bowl and is for this game. So hopefully, maybe almost a week off, he may get back on track. And playing at Dunning Field, I'm sure, will help too. And I still have a lot of faith in him. Obviously, you don't have 48 touchdown passes, if you're just hanging out at the field.
I think that's why I'm asking the question is something wrong with him? And it could be that he's under the weather. And of course, credit to the Darien defense last week and all of that.
These are good teams.
Yeah, take nothing away from what we've seen. These aren't some of the other teams that New Canaan has faced. We talked about it off the air. I mentioned it on Coffee Break this morning. I thought the quote I saw, and I'll give credit to Anthony Pirelli of Hearst Media because I saw him tweet it, the quote from Lou Marinelli, and this is to me, a very un-Lou-like kind of quote. I'll read it for you from the tweet from Anthony Pirelli. Quote, "I wonder if Frank Marcuccio was watching us play in the rain tonight. We beat a pretty good team, so I hope you saw it," unquote. Your thoughts?
Well, the background on that, of course, is the game that New Canaan played against West Hill and moved the game to Monday when it got rained out on Friday, and Frank saying that New Canaan was afraid to play in the rain because they don't do well. There's not a lot of love lost between Lou and Frank, so I think that comment was really out of the blue, like complaining, kind of ridiculous too when you won the game the way New Canaan did against West Hill. So I think there's still a little bit of that was a little dig at Frank, and I think that's it's very un-Lou-like, but it is, I got to admit, it's pretty funny.
Yeah, Frank's got an interesting relationship with a lot of the coaches and a lot of the FCAC from what I've gathered. I don't know him well. I've talked to him a few times. Always been nice to me, so I have no axe to grind. But I did find this all kind of interesting. A little bit of, and a few people tweeting shots fired in the FCAC.
It was pretty funny stuff. And Lou's we've talked to Lou hundreds of times. Lou's a funny guy, and but he does remember things too. So it's just obviously carried that one since then, and. Hey, they did win in the rain last night, so
21-6. Was it a bigger win than that? Did it seem like it was a larger victory for New Canaan, or was the score really indicative?
I felt like New Canaan could have scored more in the first half and probably could have been up about 21, 24-0 at halftime instead of just 14-6. You got to credit Windsor for getting a couple of turnovers in there, a couple of Isaiah Huff got a couple of picks on Collins. One of them was tipped at the line, so it really wasn't Collins' fault. But you got to give some credit to Windsor there. The 21-6, I think it could have been a wider margin for New Canaan. The defense, though, was so good last night. You almost got the feeling that 14-6 could have held up. Their defense was outstanding last night. Stopped Windsor inside on downs inside the 20 3 times, inside the 15 twice, once at the 5. Got 3 interceptions. DeFranco, O'Connell had one to end the game, and Smith had one playing safety in place of Mike Cognetta. So, they had a great game. There were a few sacks in there. David Strupp had a couple of sacks, and Lucas Nying had the game of his life playing both ways last night, offensive line and defensive line. So, got to give credit to Chris Silvestri and the defense last night. They were outstanding.
Windsor had only 226 total yards. That probably is the best defensive effort we've seen overall, considering, the magnitude of the game, the magnitude of who they were up against. That's a pretty good performance by that defense that I thought got... their defense flew under the radar for most of the FCAC season. Then it felt like the word was exposed by Darien in the Turkey Bowl. Last night, I thought they played a good game.
Yeah, against Darien, there were a few plays, deep passes and stuff. One to Rock Stewart in particular, where guys were just wide open.
Colin Minikis as well,
Colin Minikis, I'm sorry, I said it again. But last night, I think the job they did on Benny Foltz, the running back there, Windsor has a few outstanding athletes on that team, and Benny Foltz being one of them, their running back, and he transferred in before the 2014 season. and they'd won 22 straight with him, so he had never lost with that team. And they held them to under 50 yards rushing. And when you only have a few weapons and you're able to take one away, other guys have got to pick up the slack, and they just weren't able to last night. And the defense obviously was opportunistic, getting the three. There were 3 interceptions. They had a fumble recovery. Windsor botched a snap on a punt, which led to a touchdown by New Canaan. So, they forced Windsor into making a few mistakes. The snap on the punt was kind of just an unforced thing, but the defense was just all over them, and they took Fulce out of the game, and see what happened there.
I'll cycle back to Darien, kind of save them for later because there's a little more Darien stuff I want to get to. But we'll go to Class M for a moment. And anything else you've got on New Canaan, let me not jump away before we do that. Anything else on New Canaan?
All I can say is I thought they really, like you were saying before, it galvanized them. The injuries galvanized them and really pulled together. And I was really impressed because coming off a loss, an emotional loss in a big game, on the Turkey Bowl, I thought they were really impressive last night, just showing the depth.
Moving over, as I was mentioning, onto, let's see, Class M is where I was going to go. New Fairfield shut down St. Joe's 24-0. I found that, look, I know New Fairfield's really good. I thought St. Joseph would find some offense, and they didn't really have anything going on last night. New Fairfield, credit to them.
Yeah, New Fairfield's a good team. St. Joe's has had a good run, a couple of state championships in a row, and now it's over. But they're a strong team. They, getting into the states is something. I know kids and players and kids and coaches don't really want to hear that at this point in the season, right after a loss. But getting in is something, and New Fairfield's just a strong team, and St. Joe's, unfortunately, sometimes it happens. You just can't get anything going. It starts to snowball, and especially in weather like we had last night, it's really, really difficult to come back.
Oof, yeah, that was not pleasant conditions last night. Ledyard over Bacon Academy 55-6. Brookfield beat ATI 35-6. That's Abbott Tech Immaculate, in case you don't know. So, that lines you up for where we sit in Class M, which now will be, you've got New Fairfield, Ledyard, Killingly, and Brookfield, the winners. So you get Brookfield and Killingly, Brookfield at Killingly, in fact, in a 5-1 matchup, and Ledyard at New Fairfield in a 3-2. That could be good, Ledyard and New Fairfield. That's a long way for Ledyard to go, by the way.
It is. And that you would think that has an effect, but I wonder sometimes if these kids don't like the road trips. It becomes more of an adventure, I think, if you've got to go on like a 2-hour road trip or like that.
I like to drive, so that's me. I'm weird though.
The long ride back if you lose is terrible. But I'm sure for New Canaan, 2 hours back didn't really seem like 2 hours after winning last night.
I was talking to somebody off the air yesterday, and I said I wouldn't hesitate to have gone to Windsor and called that game last night. But I'm weird like that. I have no problem getting out of there, going home. It'd be 2 hours and change for me to get back home. But
I don't mind that. From a reporting standpoint, from a obviously from a photography standpoint, I love being down on the field. I love being at those games to see what it's all about. You do get a lot from, CPTV did that game last night,
right.
And you do get a lot from the video broadcast. But from a reporting standpoint, it's great to have a guy on the field and be there and hear what's going on, because that's when you find out things about what the kids are talking about with injuries, with other players, things like that. That's why we have Cato on the sidelines at the Turkey Bowl.
That is very true. Cato down on the sideline. We'll see Cato again in the winter. But, and I kind of like seeing these different stadiums that I don't get to see normally, these different fields and different facilities. But anyway, all that being said, let's move on down to Class S. And I said it this morning, you're going to get what you want. Crusaders and Chargers. Trinity Catholic throttling Morgan 40-12 at Boyle Stadium. Ansonia took care of Capital Advance 35-13. Also Broomfield a 28-20 win over East Catholic, and Seymour by doubled up basically, Granby 56-28. But you get Trinity Catholic and Ansonia. Now for me, that's a championship game, no disrespect to the others, but I wish I could be at that game. I probably won't. But that is such a good game.
We were talking about that matchup when Trinity played Ridgefield, and we had it on the HN network. So that's it. That's great. That's that's an awesome game, and hats off to Trinity having one of their best years ever, really. 1993, I think, was their last state tournament win. So
state championship they won in '93 under Richie Albanizio.
Exactly. And
I believe Donnie Panipata played for him on that team.
Yeah, that's right. You're absolutely right. Yeah, he was. Great move for them, especially coming from 0-11 a couple of years ago, and now you're in the state semifinals and playing Ansonia, one of the perennial contenders in the state.
It's going to be so great. So Trinity Catholic at Ansonia, Seymour at Bloomfield. We're about midway through this edition of Nutmeg Sports. Before we go to Class LL, why don't we go to a break? We'll come right back, continue. Got some Darien stuff on and off, but kind of on the field we want to get to. We'll do that when we continue here on Nutmeg Sports on the HAN Network.
Here at the Darien Sports Shop, we are very excited about our newly redesigned men's department. Gentlemen, if you're shopping for work, weekend, or wedding, we've got the latest styles and trends inside our spacious new department just for you. We have vast selections from Peter Millar, Vineyard Vines, Johnny O, Duckhead, Barber, and so much more. And you can even walk out of the store in the new Wolverine 1,000-mile men's boot. Conveniently located with free and easy parking at 1127 Post Road, Darien, Connecticut. Or shop us online at dariensport.com.
It's time to come back to hometown banking, where people are taken into account, not just balances. Where community comes first. A place where there's more than one kind of interest. Where automation will never replace consideration. Where they not only know your name, they know your dog's name too. It's time to expect more. It's time to bank well. Bank smart. Bank local. Bank well.
This fall for our red panda. That's right. Rashawn the red panda will be visiting the Beardsley Zoo for a limited time. Resembling raccoons, red pandas primarily eat bamboo, but will occasionally eat fruits, berries, young leaves, and certain tree bark, like their better-known black and white cousins. As an adult, Rashawn is expected to weigh 10 to 12 pounds, and you can see him at the South American Rainforest exhibit, Connecticut's Beardsley Zoo of Bridgeport. A whole new experience. 875 Noble Avenue, Bridgeport. 203-394-6565.
I'm Kate Chaplinsky. Join us for Coffee Break, weekdays at 11 to get the latest Connecticut news, weather, high school sports, and more. News doesn't get any more local than on Coffee Break on the HAN Network. I'm Kate.
Nutmeg Sports continues on a Wednesday here on the HAN Network. Welcome back, everyone. Dave Stewart's over there. I'm Rob Adams. Happy to have you along as we turn our attention to Class LL. And down the road last night at Brian McMahon High School, we'll start with that. Darien 41, Staples 7. I love Mars Petrosio, the head football coach down at Staples. He and his boys never had a prayer last night. Too many injuries, Dave. Ethan Berger out among them. Too many problems for that team, unfortunately. Good football team, not one of his best, but a football team that was going up against as good a Darien team as we've arguably seen.
Yes, definitely. And, even if they had everybody healthy, I don't know that they're going to beat Darien. They lost them 27-0 that last week, and again, Berger got knocked out in that game. But I think for Staples, you've got to look at it as we haven't been in the state tournament for a couple of years. We finally got back there where a lot of people were saying Staples belongs in the state tournament every year. They have to earn their way in, obviously. But I think that's what they've got to hang their hats on right now is that they got in. They played a tough team. Double L is stacked right now.
Yeah.
And, it happens. I mean, the injuries happen, and, but it's been a great season. Any of these teams that got in, Harding going 10-0, you got hats off to them. You lost in the state tournament the first round, but you got there. When's the last time Harding's been in?
Not since I've been around these parts.
That's what I mean. It's great to be in there, and I think that's what Staples has to hang their hats on. For Darien, they've got bigger targets right now.
Yeah, and I think Staples can. They don't even need to rebuild. They just need to reload a bit. That's a group that's going to be okay.
Big step forward this year.
Yeah, I agree with that. Southington over Conard, 48-6. The Blue Knights are arguably the best team in the state.
Yes, and that's what we're talking about with that Class Double L. I mean, you've got Shelton, you've got Darien, and you've got Southington, and you could make an argument for any of those teams being the champs there. And Newtown obviously is a very good team. Had a closer win, but it's just incredible division.
And yet, due to the metrics and the way it all gets formulated, Shelton, the number 1 seed in the tournament, 40-20 over West Haven.
Yes, I mean, there's no perfect system for the pointing, but Shelton had a big win last night. Now they get Newtown, and it's going to be whatever 2 teams come out of those semifinals. It's going to be a hell of a state final.
And last but not least, the only game that was really any form of a game all night. Newtown 21, Glastonbury 20.
Missed extra point. And then Newtown
Does that sound
comes
familiar?
Back. It was 20-7 after the missed extra point. And then Newtown gets together, 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter and wins.
And I'll tell you what, credit to the Nighthawks, because the Nighthawks have kind of become known for being very good in the regular season and flaming out in the postseason. So good for them, because they've kind of built this little, I don't want to say reputation, that seems harsh to put in a football program, but there is that kind of notion that Newtown can't get past a playoff game, and they got the win last night. So good for them.
And they got it in a big way, too.
They
coming
sure did.
Back like that, because they could have easily just, packed it in at that point. And, they did come back. They scored those 2 touchdowns. They get the win. And now they kind of shake the monkey off their backs, so to speak.
Now, you've got Newtown and Shelton coming up in one playoff game. And then you've got, and that's, let's be honest, let me stop there for a moment. Shelton's playing at a very high level. That's a team that has been so focused from last year. Of course, they had that huge overtime playoff loss, which you heard right here when we were still HAN Radio. The playoff loss they had to Xavier last year in the championship. They're on a mission. I think that's a tough spot for Newtown on Monday night.
I think so too. I think Newtown got their win now. I'm not saying that they're not looking for more, but I think it's going to be tough going up against Shelton. Shelton's kind of, like you said, on a mission, and they're driven right now, and they're tough. They're tough to beat on any day, and in a state tournament game, they're going to be even tougher.
We're going to grab another break. We're going to reset, and then we're going to have a guest come on and join us on the phone to talk about Darien and kind of an extra situation regarding the Darien football team. So we'll take a break. We'll bring that guest on. We'll come back right after this. We'll talk a little Darien football right after this. Nutmeg Sports on the HAN Network.
When you experience a sports injury, you want to get better and fast. Coastal Ortho Express gives you direct access to orthopedic care quickly. Their physicians are fellowship trained in sports medicine at world-class universities and are also team doctors for area football teams. For specialized personal care of sports injuries, go to Coastal Ortho Express. Open Monday through Saturday in the iPark building, 761 Main Avenue in Norwalk, or coastalorthoexpress.com. Coastal Orthopedics, keeping you on the move.
Back to school means back to busy, and Stewart's Market can save you precious time by stocking all of your favorite essentials under one roof. For a healthy start to school, we have all the ingredients. Walter Stewart's, your family-owned fresh local market, 229 Elm Street and at stewartsmarket.com.
Do you do a lot of running around but get nowhere when you're buying a car? Visit Pamby Chrysler Jeep Dodge and Ram for the one-stop buying experience and stop spinning your wheels.
Football University, the nation's leading football training experience, is now accepting applications for its 2015 camps. Our elite faculty of NFL coaches and top professionals teach position-specific on the field and in the classroom to improve your football IQ and help you reach your full potential as a player. Apply today at footballuniversity.org. Football University, where technique plus talent beats talent alone.
I'm Denise DiGregoli, the host of The Drive on the HAN Network. Join me Tuesdays for some motivational, intelligent talk with a little humor as we visit with people who live their lives mindfully. Tune in to The Drive live on Tuesdays, 12:30, here on the HAN Network.
You are watching the HAN Network, and you're not alone. 102,000 viewers have enjoyed the HAN Network in just the last 6 weeks. Advertise on the network that reaches Fairfield County, Connecticut's most engaged audience. Contact Jessica Murrin, Advertising Director, at 203-273-7312 or email jessica@han.network.
Network with Dave Stewart. I'm Rob Adams, and we're going to bring a guest on the line in just a moment. And really, Dave, the reason I wanted to bring this guest on is, once again, you know, there are these ancillary issues that kind of hang over certain things, and it gets under my skin, in fact. And it's amazing to me that there are still two fields, regardless of football, lacrosse, soccer, whatever you want to say. There are still two fields in the FCAC that do not have lights. Amazingly, one of the premier athletic schools in this conference, Darien, doesn't have lights. And I understand it's in a neighborhood. I get all of that. But with that said, Darien can't host playoff games because of this fact. And they want these games played at night, so you've got to go to McMahon last night, or now next week, as of right now, they've got to go to Boyle Stadium. And I just think it's not fair to these kids.
No, they've played. Obviously, they played awesome this year, and they've earned a spot. They've earned their spot. They've earned a home game, and they're not going to get that. And there is an advantage to having the game at home. I'm not sure that that's going to make you win or lose a game, but there is an advantage to being at home, and these kids don't get to experience that. They don't get to experience coming out of their locker room, being on their field. Just playing at home is just huge. Look at New Canaan. New Canaan goes on the road, wins, now gets to have a home game, and they're acting like that. That is a huge deal for these seniors. And, you know, Darien deserves the same.
Darien will play, as we said, Southington on Monday night. Now this game is at Boyle Stadium. And, again, because of the way it works out, you know, there was almost a college football feeling to this. It's 1 versus 2 in the state. That's how good this game is on Monday night. And the game can't be at Darien High School, which amazes me. So John Cini was nice enough to join us on the phone. He knows quite a bit about planning and zoning and a lot more, and we'll welcome him in right now. John, Rob Adams, and Dave Stewart, how are you?
Good afternoon, guys. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure, and we appreciate your time. Should there be lights at Darien, John? Let me get right to it.
Well, I'm not going to get down to the bottom of the issue because I am a current commissioner in planning and zoning, so we have to look at like a true application. But I do think that this playoff season, basically the success that the program has had this year has shined a new light on the issue that frankly has been around since 1994. You know, this is not a football issue, though. This is not a youth or high school sports issue. This is not even a Board of Education issue. I mean, they're all involved in this, and they're all stakeholders, but this is finally a community issue. We're the only community in basically, I think, Fairfield County at this point without one lit field. And ironically, St. Joe's, I think the other field you guys might have been referencing, they just won an action in the courts against the Trumbull Planning and Zoning Commission, and therefore will have lights constructed on its field, which will leave Darien the only school, the only community within the FCAC not to have lights.
Dave, John brings up an excellent point. I had forgotten about St. Joe's when I was going through this story this morning. So St. Joe's can get lights. They don't. Trinity Catholic still doesn't. And now, of course, Darien. I mean, you know, I've made my feelings clear on this.
Yeah, I look at it from a high school perspective, and Darien has a great athletic program, maybe the best in the state right now, and with their lacrosse programs and the youth leagues there. You know, there's practice time you need it for. There's just all sorts of events you can hold with lights, and you know, I think for Darien it would definitely be about time to get them.
Yeah, I agree with you, John, that it seems like it's a community thing for sure, and it's good for the community. And again, I understand you don't want to take a side one way or the other, but as you said, a community issue, and it just seems like it's good for the community. Why is it bad? Why are there people against it?
You know, I think you got to go back to 2008 when the last time that permanent lights were actually introduced within the community of Darien by the Board of Education. And it was a very different subset of community members, especially those that lived around Darien High School, that opposed the proposal. And it was shot down, not even in a public hearing standpoint, and I don't want to get into the great details, but
Sure.
in a mandatory referral that was stricken down by the former Planning and Zoning Commission. I think if you fast forward, what are we talking about 6 or 7 years now, there's been a vast change in terms of those direct neighbors that will be affected. And also a different viewpoint, especially given some of the state rules that have come down from, or state sports rules that have come down from the state regarding, the requirement that games are played under permanent lights. I mean, we can't even drag in, temporary lights of high quality to host this game. And so that has, I believe, kind of swayed some of the sentiment in the community. I mean, listen, there are a number of stakeholders. We have to balance the rights of the property owners versus the rights and the will of the community. But that's, we're willing to relook at that. Our chairman, Susan Cameron's been out there saying, send us an application, we'll work through this. So, like I said, I think even though this football season has shined a big spotlight. I mean, if you go on social media, email, Twitter, all the above, Facebook, it's really created a firestorm, especially after last night's win. And I know there's going to be a lot of smart people that are willing to work collaboratively to come to some sort of fair and just solution regarding, it's basically a two-step process, a regulation change and a special permit to, construct lights on individual properties.
And they have come to reasonable solutions in a lot of other Fairfield County towns. You mentioned already what's happened at St. Joseph. I was front and center for the battle in Greenwich about 13 years ago now. They finally got lights, and granted,
Don't forget Westport. I mean, Westport.
That's what I was coming around to, yep.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
That sits in a very residential community, much like Darien, similar demographics around it. And they came to a stipulated agreement in 2011.
And I
haven't heard any complaints since that has been implemented up there.
And I do think it's rather silly that the CIAC, and I like Joel Cookson. He comes on the show all the time, and Susan Schultz will have a story on a lot of this tomorrow in the Darien Times when it comes out. But I do think that the CIAC is misguided in their belief that you can't use temporary lights because, Dave, I've seen bad permanent lighting. A lot of these temporary lights can be better than the permanent lights.
Oh, definitely. And it gives those kids a chance to play in a big game and under the spotlight and have their home game. Instead of having to go, in this case, to Boyle Stadium, which, nothing against Boyle Stadium, but it's not their home field.
It's not their home, It's not their home field.
Yeah.
And Rob Trafone, the head football coach at Darien, has been very passionate in what he told Steve Buno. He talked to Susan. I've talked to him. I'm going to talk to him more about it. These kids have a right to play in their own locker room, be on their own turf. It just makes sense.
And one thing.
But guys, I want to take the focus again away from just the football and
Absolutely.
the kids. And I got two kids that play youth football and play 3 sports all year round. I mean, this truly is a community issue. It's beyond the sports. And I know this is a sports show, but that's the message that's got to be received by our first selectmen and those on the Board of Education and my colleagues on Planning and Zoning. And there's a community decision to be made, and there's going to be a community compromise.
So what will the process be to kind of step us through what it would take to get this to happen now?
Essentially, as you see in any of these communities that have recently implemented lights, you need, in Darien, you need a regulation change to raise the height of the lights. And then you would need a special permit at individual properties in which you would like to use those lights. So that would be the two-step process. We, as a legislative body on Planning and Zoning, have the right, and state statutes allow us to look at regulations from time to time to meet community needs. So, maybe about doing something proactively from our commission instead of waiting for an application in order to address this issue. I think, like I said, the discussion's been ongoing. It dies from time to time. I was one that was integral in getting the practice lights up that are pointing in one direction that only reach 30 feet.
Yep.
And then it's died, over the years. But I think, courtesy of the tremendous success that Rob and his program have had this year, I think, it's dragged along this issue that has been around since 1994 in town. So we as leadership, those that are elected, we're all volunteers, but we're elected to lead in our town, need to step up and find a solution.
Well, you've been very gracious to give us a few minutes. I know you had to bounce out of a meeting and get to us, so I know we very much appreciate your time, and it's good to talk to you. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for all the coverage, guys, on not only this, but, the sports in general in Fairfield.
We appreciate it. Thanks again, John. Appreciate it.
Thanks, John.
Bye-bye.
All right, John Cini of Darien Planning and Zoning, thanks to him for coming on. And he's right. I understand there's a larger community issue here. We're looking at it from the straight up sports and high school sports, but there is a larger community factor there.
Yeah, the field gets more use than just a few football games during the year, 4 or 5 football games. And, it's not just, obviously there's other sports at the high school that would be able to use it. There's the phys ed program that's able to use it. I'm familiar with New Canaan High School in Dunning Field, which, by the way, they went through the same sort of thing when their football field used to be Stanley P. Meade Field over at Saks,
right.
And they wanted to put in, well, they didn't want to put in turf, they wanted to put in lights, and a lot of the neighbors balked at it, and there were a lot of people who fought against it, so they were able to find a location where it was pretty much acceptable for everyone to have turf and to have lights. But you've got youth leagues using that, you've got the high school using that, you've got the phys ed program fitting it into their curriculum, and you can have just about any type of event and any type of weather on that field, and so it is, John's right, it's a big community, a big plus for a community.
And turf is a whole different topic because there is the argument of, is it truly healthy, this, that, and the other. That's not the topic for today.
Yes.
The topic is to get lights up, and there are compromises that can be made. They were made in Greenwich, they were made in Westport. I know Susan has already spoken to Mars Petrosio about some of the things that they did. As I said, I clearly remember Greenwich, and I understand Route 1 runs right behind the press box and the grandstands, but there are houses up above, especially when you're looking down at the field up to the left, and they made life absolutely miserable for Greenwich High School. But they finally got the lights up, and again, you make certain compromises. I'm from a town that's surrounded by houses, but they put lights up, and there's been no complaints.
I can kind of understand what the neighbors are saying if that's, if they feel it's intrusive, but also, like you said, compromise is the name of the game here, and how much is that really going to affect them? And that's I think working with the town on things, and the town working with the neighbors and the neighbors working with the town. That's the best way to approach it.
And embrace it. It's supposed to be good for everyone. It's supposed to be good for the community, and it'd be nice. And I just think the CIAC is foolhardy to not allow for temporary lights and allow these kids to play, because again, make there be a standard to the lights that you get. I know there are circumstances where they get some pretty good grade temporary lights to put up at these places, and they're not cheap. There are ways to get it done.
Yes, definitely, and it would be a huge plus for I know John was talking about the community aspect of it, but the focus right now is on football. The football team's the biggest story going on in Darien and Darien sports, and for them, I mean, this is going to be the last game maybe the next to last game, the last home game for all these seniors, and for them to not be able to play where they deserve to play is a shame.
I know we're into overtime, but I'll wrap up this way. Darien had to finish their season with 3 home games. If you think about it, none of those games were played at Darien High School.
It's true. And one thing that we're not talking about is CIC moving the semifinals from a Saturday afternoon to a Monday night if they don't do that, which I don't know what that decision was based on, but to play a Monday night game as opposed to a Saturday afternoon game. I love those Saturday afternoon games, I think it makes it easier for parents to get there. I think it makes it easier for fans to get there. I mean, you could have had a game at New Canaan High School and a game up the road at Darien High School, and if they spaced it out a little bit, could have gone to both.
And in this newer regime, or this newer era of the 3 rounds of playoffs, the semis were played at neutral sites in recent years. Now, the previous years when there was just semis and championship, you played the semis at a home. The semis were a home game. Higher seed got the home game, which I remember the days of Greenwich going to Boyle Stadium because they didn't have lights. But now you had, we had it our first year on HAN radio. We did a New Canaan home game as a quarterfinal. Then we hit the road because Ridgefield played Southington at Strong Stadium in West Haven. neutral site. Now they've gone to this other way in which the higher seed still gets a home game. So that's great. Great for New Canaan, great for Darien, but Darien gets to go to Stanford.
I do like the semifinal home game. I do like that. I think
I'm okay with
cool.
it.
I think that's cool. And it is hard to find these sites and spread it out. So I think it's cool. It gives somebody an added incentive to finish well and get the higher seed. And I don't know about moving it to Monday, as I said, but you take what you can get at this point. But it is what it is at this point for Darien, and they just have to go out there and focus on what they're doing and play the game because they've got a tough one.
So I would imagine come Monday, this guy will be at Dunning Field watching the Rams as they have their own battle.
Let's hope no rain next
Hope
Monday.
no rain.
We had enough last night.
We'll be hitting the road for the FCAC Tour once again, this time the winter version. So Don Eng and Mike Suppy will be here on Monday and on Tuesday as well. I'll do Wednesday's show, but I'll likely be, at Darien for part of it and then probably going to Boyle Stadium. I'll go check out the Southington game with Darien.
That'll be a good one to keep in touch with that because I'd like to know what's going on over there. That's going to be
if I get down there,
game.
I'll tweet it. I'll admit, I'm torn because that Trinity Catholic Ansonia game also intrigues me a lot.
Yes. Oh, yeah. And that's a big game and a great game for Trinity to be involved in.
So, again, we ran into a little bit of overtime, but our thanks to John Cini. Susan Schultz was nice enough to help us put that together. Her story will run tomorrow. This is an important topic in my mind on lights, not just as John said from, the community perspective, but I think from overall. And again, I forgot about St. Joe's, but there are still 3 schools in the FCAC that don't have lights, and it's, time to move into the 21st century.
We'll eventually get there, but it's a tedious process.
AJ Simonowski was nice enough to sit and keep us occupied running the controls on the other side, and we ran into a little bit of OT today. So that'll do it for Nutmeg Sports. Thanks to Dave Stewart for coming up once again. We'll have him on again in the near future, I hope. Don't be a stranger, sir.
I'll try not to be.
All right, very good. He can break as many microphones as he wants if he keeps coming up here. For all of us here at the HAN Network, I'm Rob Adams. Tomorrow we get your day started with Coffee Break at 11 o'clock. Yankee Fisherman, don't forget about that as well. But for now, have a good night, everyone. So long.